And of course, we have some fun with you this Friday morning. So do join us. We are live on Facebook. Channel Africa is where you can find us there. And on Instagram at Channel Africa 1.
Yeah, man, we're looking forward to this conversation. Today, we are putting a spotlight of one of Johannesburg's most vibrant creative hubs. It's called The Forge in Johannesburg, South Africa. The venue has been a driving force in the city's arts and culture scene, hosting a diverse range of live performances, talks, and exhibitions from music, theater to art and activism. The Forge is a space where creativity knows no bounds. Today we're joined by Yvonne Phyllis, who is the director of The Forge. Thank you for joining us here on Channel Africa, Yvonne.
Thank you so much, Benjamin. Hi, Palesa as well.
Morning.
Thank you. That was such a wonderful introduction. It really, really explains the kind of work that we do.
Yeah.
I am so happy to be here to speak about our work. So, thank you so much for the invitation.
Thank you as well for joining us on that live stream. Remember, as a listener, you can check out that live stream on our social media. Join our YouTube page at Channel Africa 1 being the handle, or you can simply find it on our Facebook page, Channel Africa. Well, let's talk a little bit about how The Forge came about. It's a fantastic idea, but where does the concept come from?
Okay, so I was brought in after the conceptualization of the space. So there were a number of creatives and thinkers who were based mainly in Joburg at the time, who really were thinking about what are some of the ways to engage in the battle of ideas, and where would that be? And they thought to have the Forge in Johannesburg. And I was brought in as part of the team to really be in the operations. And you know how it is when you're passionate about the arts, you end up also doing other things. So now I'm operations, I'm also doing programming. So really I come at a time when, the concept already exists, and I'm one of the people that really gets the project off the ground. So that's where I come in.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about what is the idea of this space and what does it actually aim to achieve? Because there's a diversity of ideas. Some of the ideas are very much ones that are very specific to also the decolonization project here on the African continent. There's a lot of themes that have to do also with our sense of feeling like we belong here on the African continent. There is a sense there of kind of affirming who we are right here in the hub of Johannesburg. Tell us a little bit about those particular themes that are usually explored at The Forge, because some of them are ideas that are not necessarily in the mainstream.
That's wonderful. That's a wonderful way of putting it, Benjamin. That's exactly it. As I said, we are engaged in the battle of ideas. So for a very long time, it's been presented as the natural state of affairs, that ideas about the world should come from the West, or come from the West, or actually come from the bourgeoisie. And so when you're then engaged in the battle of ideas in the way that we do as The Forge, you say, but that is not true. So first, you critique. And then you move from the point of critique and say, so if we're saying it's untrue, it is not true that all ideas about the world should come from the West, or are those that are presented to us from the West or by the West or the bourgeoisie, what then is the alternative, right? And then this takes us to, the orientation, the political orientation of the space. We're a Pan-African space, we're an internationalist space, right? And we believe that, ideas come from people, ideas come from Africa, and this idea that, Africa, the tyrannous, kind of nonsensical narration of Africa that, firstly, there were no people. Secondly, there are no people that think in Africa.
Yeah.
Hang on, thinkers express themselves through arts and culture. We saw Odata Huma Sekela, Mamule Tambulu, Mama, Miriam Makeba, those were cultural expressions, or Tata, Fela Kuti. These were people who were engaged, in the battle of ideas through culture. And these are people from Africa. They are thinkers and writers in this continent. And, we gather in that space and we insist on this idea that we've always been thinkers, and we've always found ways to express ourselves. We are people that come from a history of having been colonized, and in our case, then, having experienced apartheid. But throughout those processes, people, I don't like using this word, resistance. Maybe let me use people have resisted.
Yeah.
So sorry, I wanted to say I don't like using the word resilient.
Yeah,
but
sure.
people have resisted.
Sure.
Throughout time. There's not a time when African people or marginalized people, wherever they find themselves in the world, who have just sat and accepted, being colonized, being marginalized. There's always been resistance, and so we try to be a space that show that. And also because you've already explained that there are various ways in which we do the work, and because we're a cultural space, culture is quite a central part of our work, and resisting this idea that culture is only important because it's performance. No, it's political education. It's conscientization. Culture is Pan-African. Culture is internationalist. You see it in the relationships between Omar Miriam, Nonina Simone, and the kinds of conversations that we're having. So really, really, culture has the ability to also bring people together. Yeah. Right?
Sure. Yvonne,
not only to...
Yes. I need to take a bit of a break, and I want us to explore a little bit of that around the fact of the provision of space, because at times artists and creatives are always looking out for spaces where they can express themselves, and there so many of them that are not there, right? So they are far in between to find those cultural spaces where you can exhibit, where you can launch maybe a book that's not necessarily published by a big publisher, or an environment whereby you can actually start off your poetry. I love the fact that the space accommodates the new and the old, the found and the unseen. And we'll talk a little bit about that curation process as well, because I think it's very specific, but also the fact that, there is a sense of an emerging of togetherness with these creatives in that one space. We'll take a break and then we'll come back to that.
It's called The Hub, and it's a creative hub that is Pan-African. The Forge,
yes.
My apologies. It's a creative hub that's Pan-African, that stands for cultural resistance, and a way for those who are young, those who are old, those who are new, and those who have been existing to make the space their own. We are speaking this morning to the director at The Forge, Yvonne Phyllis, helping us really unpack the nature of this place, but also what it stands for. You spoke a little bit, Yvonne, about resistance and this place being a form of cultural resistance. Let's speak about the curation process that allows all these different modes of resistance to exist within the space.
Okay, thank you so much, Palesa. Curation is a huge part, of course, of the work. And we try to also create a space that is different from what you would ordinarily find in many other spaces. For instance, if there's a conversation around, let's say, land, because land is the thing that I breathe. It's my research. So there will be an activist as part of the panel. There will be a cultural worker whose work is on themes around land. There will be, for instance, a lawyer, let's say, that deals with land cases, so that, people who occupy various spaces in society are able to gather and think together. So that's a very huge part of our curation, to think of ways to bring ourselves together, because I think that's one of the ways in which the work continues, right? So curation is a huge part of it, but also understanding the importance of collaboration is a huge part of the way in which we think about the space. Because we understand that as a team of the Forge, which is just a small team, we alone are not going to be able to successfully curate a space that speaks to everyone. So collaboration becomes a very central part of our programming, but also thinking about the people that walk into the room as protagonists and not just an audience.
Yeah.
And so understanding that you're curating work, that speaks not only to the people that are going to be in front, running a workshop, reciting a poem, whatever kind of program we have on the day, but also understanding that the people in the room are also thinkers. And so there's always an opportunity, for everyone in the room to then engage in the rest of the program. So that's how we curate the work. One, curating it internally and then inviting people to make the program possible, but also to reach out to communities and say, please, let's collaborate on this program. And we've been so fortunate and privileged to have people, for the most part, say, of course, let's do it.
Well, you've created the space yourselves. You guys have created the space, not just as a platform or a place for the creative and the visual embodiment of, Pan-Africanism, but there's also a bookstore and a coffee shop. You say it's The Commune, a radical Pan-African socialist and feminist bookstore and coffee shop. Tell me about that part of the space.
Lovely. Can I just say I love having this conversation with you, Palesa and Benjamin. It's so amazing to hear people talk about the space, appreciating the space in the way that you do. It's really heartwarming. Of course, the space is the home. I mean, the Forge is the home of the Commune Bookshop and Ingani Books, which is a publisher that has, similar kinds of themes in the kinds of books that they produce or publish. So it's really a bookshop inside of the Forge, which takes, of course, the same kind of politics as the rest of the space. So it's really just one project that houses, various kinds of work. It houses the cultural work, the dialogues, the different kinds of programming. It also houses the bookshop, which is part of the Forge. It also houses Ingani Books, which is the publishing house. In fact, we had a book launch on Thursday. Unfortunately, I couldn't be there. The latest book by Professor Mandla J. Khatebe, a book about, the unfinished revolution in South Africa. Apartheid did not end. Is the title of the book. And so really the Forge is the home of many, many, many things that speak together.
Well, it's incredible. Tell us a little bit more about, what the future of the space actually looks like. Because, one would think, okay, it sounds quite serious for most of us, but actually you house so many different types of events that appeal to different kinds of people, those who are in the visual arts, those who love theater, and those who love music. I saw just this past week you had someone, a band that we had on our show just 2 weeks ago as well, the Sanka Experiment. And you've got DJs, you've got, visual arts programs that are there. So what does a future of a space like this look like?
Amazing. We're thinking right now, well, firstly is to continue the work and to collaborate with more and more people who are doing similar kinds of work. So if you are listening in and you would love to collaborate, please write to me at Yvonne at theforge.org.za, Yvonne at theforge.org.za. We have to do this together, my Africa. And we're also in the process of thinking about, how do we make the Forge a space that also speaks to other cultural spaces in Africa. And so in the process of doing research about the kinds of spaces that exist in other parts, we're in conversation with comrades at Mwamko in Kenya and other comrades in Kenya in the Mathare Social Justice Center, but also the Andrew Bruin Center in Ghana. And so we're thinking of seeking many, many, many more others. And if you're someone who is listening in and knows these kinds of spaces, I think it's important for the Pan-Africanist project to expand. And for that to expand, we also need to work together as spaces that do similar kind of work. So if you're listening in and you know of any spaces like that, again, Yvonne at theforge.org.za, let us know.
Thank you so much, Yvonne. Where are you guys situated? Where can you be found here in the streets of Johannesburg?
Please come through. We are on 87 De Korte Street. So if you are familiar with the Artivists, you will find us next to the Artivists.
Lovely.
Come through. The bookshop is open Tuesday to Friday, 10 to 5, and then on Saturday, 10 to 3.
Thank you so much, Yvonne. That is the director at The Forge, an amazing creative hub, a space where that is Pan-African, that, is for the African people, but also an expression of culture, minds, and all sorts of expressions that allow us to just be who we are and forge forward. That is Yvonne Phyllis. It's 9:31 Central Africa time. Let's get our latest sports news.